Hey everybody, I'm here today to talk to you about 6 tips for holding the steering wheel properly. This thing right here, this steering wheel is one of the key factors in driving a car safely, properly, and effectively. So you should be using these 6 tips to really make sure that you're holding the steering wheel properly and also controlling it properly. Now let's get right to it. Tip number 1 is get 2 hands on the wheel as often as you can. Now, if you're driving an automatic car like I am right here, you can have 2 hands on the wheel like 99.9% of the time, because you might have to adjust your vents or your climate control or your radio, but for the most part, both hands are going to be on the wheel for the most part. If you're driving a manual car, that percentage goes down a bit because you have to use one hand to shift through the gears. But with that being said, even if you're driving a manual car, you should be able to get 2 hands on the wheel for a good percentage of the time. And with that being said, steering with 2 hands, holding the steering wheel with 2 hands is going to produce better, more effective, more controlled steering than holding the steering wheel with 1 hand. So just get 2 hands on the wheel as often and as frequently as you can. Tip number 2 is that seat position matters. If I hold the steering wheel like this, I have a good control and grip and maneuverability of the steering wheel. But if my seat was way back here, leaned back and pushed back, I would not have good grip of the steering wheel. So it's not only your steering wheel position, but it's also your seat position that matters. You want to get a seat position that allows you to have a comfortable grip of the steering wheel, but it also allows you to get full control while turning the steering wheel, and also good maneuverability even when you hold the steering wheel. You want to get the ideal seat position that allows you to be comfortable and feel comfortable while still having the ideal optimal grip on the steering wheel. Tip number 3 is to always maintain control of the steering wheel. Now, when you're holding the steering wheel, certain types of holds and certain grips will reduce the amount of control that you have over the wheel. So for instance, one of the grips that I've spoken about in a previous video is if you're making a turn like this. When you hold the steering wheel like this, you're very limited with the grip that you have and the maneuverability. First and foremost, you only have 1 hand on the wheel. Secondly, I can turn this way nicely, but I can't turn this way nicely. I'd have to switch hands to turn this way nicely. That's one grip that basically one way to hold the steering wheel that reduces the control. Also, when you're turning the wheel, you don't want to go into a steering position that's going to cause you to lose control when you're turning, let's say, to the side. So let's say I was making a right-hand turn and I was steering like this. I don't have very good control over the wheel like this, and my body is leaning all the way to the right. In the same way, if I was doing it to the left like this would be a very bad way to hold the steering wheel because it lacks control. So you always want to make sure that the grip that you have on the steering wheel, the hold that you have on the steering wheel, allows for the optimal amount of control. Tip number 4 is to grip the steering wheel in a way that is firm but also flexible. So with that being said, you know, if I was gripping the steering wheel like this, I would have total grip on the steering wheel, but it's not very flexible. On the other hand, if I had just a loose grip like this, I would be very flexible, but I wouldn't really have good grip or control over the wheel. You want an in-between of those two. So you don't want to grip it really hard. You don't want to just barely grip it. You want to have a good amount of grip on it, a nice firm grip, but still loose enough that it's flexible and you can easily move your hands if you need to do one method of steering or the other. Okay, so you want a grip that is firm but flexible. Tip number 5 is know how to access the controls. Now, chances are you're going to have all sorts of controls around your steering wheel and on the steering wheel. We have the windshield wipers over here. We have the headlights and the turn signals over here. And we have various radio, cruise control, Bluetooth controls on the steering wheel itself. You might even have paddle shifters around the wheel. You want to know how to access those controls while still keeping a grip on the steering wheel. So with that being said, I like to generally hold my wheel at about the 10 and 2 position. But then what I do is I use one hand and move one hand to the 3 o'clock or the 9 o'clock position when I want to control something. So if I'm driving at 10 and 2 and then I want to use my windshield wipers, I take my right hand and I move it to the 3 o'clock position to use the windshield wipers. If I'm driving at 10 and 2 and I want to put on my turn signal, I take my left hand and I move it to the 9 o'clock position, which allows me to still have grip, but it allows me to use my turn signals, or use my high beams, or adjust my headlights, and so forth. So you want to make sure that you know exactly what you can do to still keep control over the steering wheel while still allowing you to control the steering wheel controls, okay? I know I said the word control a lot within that, but that's the best way to put it. Last but not least, tip number 6 is going to be to do what works for you. There are all sorts of ideal ways to hold the steering wheel and control the steering wheel, but you know what? You got to do what works for you. That means what is acceptable locally where you're driving, especially if you're doing your driving test, you want to use the steering method or the steering wheel grip or hold that is acceptable where you live. But also, let's say you have a little bit of shoulder pain when you hold the wheel at 10 and 2. You want to move down to something like 2:30 and 9:30, like in between 10 and 2 and 9 and 3. You want to go in between. If that works for you and it's safe and it allows you to control the wheel, go for it. Let's say instead of this distance from the wheel, you have to go back a little bit and go on a little bit of a recline like that. Then you know what? If that works for you and if it allows you to control the wheel and hold the wheel safely and effectively, then go for it, okay? And that's basically it. In this video, I've gone over 6 tips for holding the steering wheel properly. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Let me know what you think down below as a comment. What are some other tips for holding the steering wheel properly? Let me know as a comment down below. And of course, be sure to subscribe for more great car and driving videos just like this one. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.